Hi everyone, I'm Olivia, and today I'll be talking about the process of preparing a pair of pointe shoes. So I realize that many of you may not be too familiar with what a pointe shoe is. So first, let's take a second and think about pointe shoes. What's the first thing that comes to mind? What words or images do you think of? Is it square, the word toe shoes, or maybe even boxes? These images are popular in the media, but they're actually a false representation of what pointe shoes really look like. Preparing pointe shoes is actually much harder than it may appear to be on the outside, but in reality, it is a meticulous process that takes great skill, patience, and time. I would like to share and show the process of preparing your pointe shoes, but in order to do so, your image of what a pointe shoe is needs to be reshaped. So first, here's a brief crash course of the history of pointe shoes. The concept started first in France when a ballet master, Charles Dildot, wanted to create the illusion that his dancers were floating on their toes on stage. So in order to do that, written by Grier Cooper from danceus.org, quote, in 1795, Charles Dildot created an invention he called a flying machine, a sort of rope and pulley system that lifted dancers upward and allowed them to stand on their toes, unquote. This image is a prototype of what the pulley system would have looked like and how it would have been used, but Charles Dildot dancers would have only been floating about 2 inches off of the ground to give them the illusion that they were floating. Marie Taglioni was the first dancer to wear these shoes and use the pulley system. Again, Cooper states, quote, Marie Taglioni took things to the next level when she first danced La Sylphide on Pointe. Although her shoes were nothing more than modified satin slippers darned at the sides and toes to help the shoes hold their shape, unquote. The shoe that we know today only started to take shape recently. The next dancer to take that big leap was, in fact, Anna Pavlova. Finally, Cooper writes, quote, but the birth of modern pointe shoe is often attributed to the early 20th century Russian ballerina Anna Pavlova, who was one of the most famous and influential dancers of her time. She inserted toughened leather soles into her shoes for extra support and flattened and hardened the toe area to form a box, making the shoes much like the ones we wear today, unquote. This photo shows the progression of pointe shoes from Taglioni's era, from Pavlova's era to our era today. As you can see, it started out as just a soft shoe with a soft box at the top, and then it moved into a harder shoe with a more darned toe at the top. And then to the shoe we have today, a shoe that people are able to stand up on their own without any support. So here's some vocab that you will need to know when you're preparing your pointe shoes. So the satin is the material the pointe shoe is lined with on the outside. A box is the rectangular part of the shoe. The vamp is the length of the shoe from your knuckles all the way down to your toes. The wings are the side of the shoe on either side of the box that give you support. The shank is the wooden sole of the shoe. And the platform is the flat part of the shoe that touches the ground. You will also need some supplies too. Some supplies needed include a needle and thread, which is used for sewing on the ribbons and elastics of the shoe. Pliers, which are sometimes used because the needle and thread is sometimes hard to get through the material, so it can help you sew through tougher material. Scissors, which are very important. They are used to cut the ribbons and the elastics when you're measuring, and they're also used to score the top of your shoe before you start dancing. And finally, a lighter is used to seal the edges of the ribbons once you cut them so they don't fray. The first step is to try on the shoes to see which shoe feels better on which foot. There is no designated left or right, so this is just up to the dancer's discretion. Second is to measure and cut the ribbons and elastic for your shoe. For your ribbons, measure from the arch of your inner foot and outer foot and go around the base of your ankle twice. This is how they will be tied when you dance at the base of your ankle, so this is how you should measure it. Same goes for the elastics. Many people do their elastics in many different ways. Some do 1 and 2. So if you do 1, just go from your heel all the way around to your heel again. And if you do 2, again, go from your inner arches of your foot and make an X and cross over to the back of your heel. The next step is to sew your ribbons onto your pointe shoes. Sew exactly where you measured them, near the inner and the outer arch of your shoe. If you measured it in a certain way, make sure you sew them the exact same way so that your measurements add up. A tip for sewing pointe shoes, which I really liked from the Canada National Ballet School, suggests that ribbons should be stitched from a low down inside the shoe, taking care to attach them to the lining only. Don't sew through the satin and avoid catching the drawstring, unquote. This can be achieved by using a whip stitch, and it makes the shoe basically look more presentable. This image is a great example of a cleanly sewn ribbon that does not go through both layers of the shoe. It only goes through the first layer of fabric. Again, you're going to repeat the same process for your elastics, and if you need help, just refer back to figure 1 on the previous slide. Then you're going to pull and adjust your drawstring and tie it really tight. A common misconception is that the drawstring is left in a bow, but it's actually tied about triple knotted and then cut really low and tucked inside the shoe because you're not allowed to see the drawstring when you're on stage dancing. Then you're going to go up on point and decide if you need to square up your box. If yes, you could use your scissors and you could scrape the edges of the platform all where it meets the box, and you're going to go all the way around and you're just going to scrape it with the scissors and you're going to score the top. Or you could darn the edges, as you've seen with Anna Pavlova's shoe. That was an exaggeration, but you could go all the way around the edges with your needle and thread and darn it. It just gives the shoe a flatter surface. Next, it's time to break in your shoes. This is a simple process that is made to make the shoe mold to your own foot. As the Kennedy Center explains, quote, with experienced dancers learn exactly how to break in their pointe shoes to their liking. Some ballerinas bend and twist new shoes, slam them indoors, or even dunk them in water, unquote. There are many different processes and ways you can do that. It, again, is up to the dancer's discretion. You can do it whatever way you find fits you the best. So the process of pointe shoes can take up, preparing pointe shoes can take up to about an hour for beginners, but for professionals, it's really necessary that they learn how to do this really fast because professionals go through pointe shoes for an average of a couple of hours. So they have to know how to do this process really quickly because there's a very quick turnover because they're using their shoes so much. This is what a new shoe looks like, and this is what a dead shoe looks like. And as you can see, the dead shoe is unsafe to dance in. So it's really important the dancers know their proper way of preparing their pointe shoes so they are safe while they're dancing and they don't hurt themselves. Remember, there are many different variations to preparing your pointe shoes, and the process will be unique and different to every shoe and buddy. It's a very important process because sewing your pointe shoes correctly can otherwise be very dangerous for a dancer. It may take many trials and errors to perfect your own certain way of preparing your pointe shoes, but once you've got the hang of your certain way, you know a very important skill that is needed to be a dancer, preparing your pointe shoes. Thank you for your time and have a great day. And here are my sources.